In the journey of life, we often find ourselves at crossroads, uncertain of the path ahead. We face challenges that test our strength, moments of doubt that cloud our vision, and times of despair that seem insurmountable. But let me tell you today, there is a way that leads us through the darkest valleys and onto the mountaintops of hope and peace. This way is not defined by our own understanding or strength, but by a presence that guides, empowers, and transforms. It's a presence that walks beside us, leading us with wisdom, comforting us with peace, and empowering us with strength beyond our own. When we choose to walk with this presence, we are not alone. We are accompanied by a guide who knows the terrain better than we ever could. This guide does not push us from behind, but walks alongside us, offering counsel, encouragement, and the strength to continue when we feel we cannot take another step. But walking with this presence requires more than just acknowledgement. It requires surrender. It means yielding our will, our plans, and our desires to the guidance of this presence. It means trusting that the path laid before us, though sometimes challenging, is the path that leads to fulfillment, purpose, and peace. As we walk, we begin to notice changes within ourselves. Our hearts soften, our perspectives broaden, and our actions reflect the love and compassion we've received. We find ourselves more patient, more kind, more understanding. These changes are not of our own doing, but are the result of walking closely with this presence, allowing it to mold and shape us into the individuals we were always meant to be. God/S messages, there will be times when the path becomes steep, when the journey feels too long, and when the weight of the world seems unbearable. But even in those moments, we are not abandoned. The presence that walks with us does not leave us in our struggles. Instead, it carries us, strengthens us, and reminds us that we are not alone. So, I urge you today, take that first step. Choose to walk with this presence. Open your heart to its guidance, trust in its wisdom, and allow it to lead you to the life of peace, purpose, and fulfillment that awaits. God/S messages, remember, the journey is not about the destination, but about the walk itself. And when we walk with this presence, we find that the journey becomes one of joy, growth, and transformation. If you would like a more detailed version or further elaboration on specific points, please let me know, and I would be happy to assist. Life is filled with twists and turns, and for many, the road feels more like a wilderness than a well-paved highway. Each day brings its own set of uncertainties, its own trials, its own burdens. There are days we wake up with a weight on our chest, not knowing how we'll face what lies ahead. Maybe it's the grief of losing someone we loved. Maybe it's the anxiety of a future that looks dark and uncertain. Maybe it's the guilt of mistakes made or the pain of wounds still fresh. Wherever we find ourselves, there is a truth we often forget. We are not walking alone. There is a presence that walks with us, not just beside us, but within us, whispering words of comfort when the world offers only silence. This presence doesn't come with loud declarations or dramatic displays. It comes quietly, gently, like the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. You may not even realize it's there at first. You may think you're walking through the storm alone, but then something happens. Peace in the middle of chaos, strength when you thought you had none left, a sense of direction when you were ready to give up. That's not coincidence, that's not luck, that's guidance. When we face trials, it's easy to turn inward, to shut down, to give in to fear and despair. But in those very moments, if we stop and listen, we can sense a gentle prompting, a nudge in the right direction, a reminder that we are not abandoned, we are being led. Even when we don't understand the path, even when the road ahead is fogged over with questions and tears, we are not wandering without purpose. There is a hand steadying us, even when our own legs feel too weak to stand. Think of the stories we've heard. the people who survived unthinkable hardships, who walked through fire and came out refined instead of ruined. Ask them how they made it. Ask them what kept them going when everything around them was falling apart. They'll tell you it wasn't their own strength, it wasn't their own plan, it was something greater, something deeper. It was knowing somehow, some way that they weren't walking the path alone. That knowledge, that deep, unshakable sense, gave them hope. And that hope gave them the courage to keep going, one step at a time. Sometimes the guidance we receive doesn't make sense in the moment. We're told to wait when we want to run. We're told to speak when we want to stay silent. We're told to forgive when we want to hold on to the pain. But with time, we look back and see how every detour was a blessing in disguise, how every delay had a purpose, how every valley we passed through was shaping us into something stronger, something better. Guidance isn't always about showing us where to go. Sometimes it's about showing us who we're becoming along the way. And don't think for a second that this presence only walks with the strong, the wise, the perfect. No, it walks with the broken, the hurting, the confused. It walks with the sinner and the seeker, with the one who fell 7 times and stood up 8. It doesn't wait for us to have it all together. It meets us in the middle of our mess, in the middle of our questions, and simply says, "Come." That's the kind of guide we have, one that doesn't demand perfection but offers direction, one that doesn't scold us for getting lost, but rejoices every time we turn back and follow the right path again. Many people live their lives trying to control every outcome. They plan and prepare and still find themselves blindsided by life. And when those moments come, they wonder, why? Why didn't things go the way I wanted? Why did this happen to me? And yet, even in those painful moments, there is guidance available. Not the kind that always explains the why, but the kind that helps us through the what now. That is a different kind of comfort. It doesn't always come with answers, but it always comes with presence, with peace, with clarity for the next step. This presence doesn't promise an easy road. It doesn't promise that we won't face storms, heartbreak, or struggle. What it promises is that we won't face them alone, and that makes all the difference. You see, storms will come regardless. Life has no shortage of them. But when we walk with guidance, we discover a calm that carries us through the wind and waves. We learn to walk with confidence, not because we know the way, but because we trust the one who does. There's a story told of a traveler lost in the mountains. The fog was thick, and the night was closing in. He stumbled over rocks, unsure if he was moving towards safety or danger. But then he heard a voice calling from ahead. It wasn't loud, but it was steady. The traveler didn't recognize the voice, but something about it made him want to follow. Step by step, he moved toward the sound, and though he couldn't see where he was going, that voice led him out of the fog, back to safety. That's what guidance does. It speaks even when we can't see. It leads us when we can't find our way. Some people wait until they are desperate to seek direction. They wait until the bottom falls out, until every option has failed. But let me tell you this, the presence that guides us isn't just for emergencies. It's for everyday life. It's for the choices we make, the relationships we build, the words we speak. It's not just for the big moments, it's for every moment. And the more we learn to listen, the more we learn to follow, the more clearly we begin to hear that still small voice whispering, "This is the way. Walk in it." There is a reason why some people seem to walk through storms with peace, while others are paralyzed by fear. It's not because they're stronger or smarter. It's because they're not walking alone. They've learned to trust the presence beside them. They've learned to take one step at a time, even when they can't see the full path ahead. And every step they take builds a trust that becomes unshakable. That's not superstition. That's not wishful thinking. That's the power of guidance, real, living, and active. So when the road gets dark and you're unsure of the next turn, remember, you are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. The path may be unfamiliar to you, but it is not unfamiliar to the one who leads. And if you listen, if you follow, if you take that next step in faith, you'll find that the way forward is being made clear, one step at a time. That is the promise, and that is the hope we carry with us. We spend much of our lives trying to maintain control. We map out plans, construct dreams, build our expectations like towers reaching into the clouds. But how many times do those towers crumble? How often do we find that our strength is not enough, our wisdom falls short, our determination only carries us so far? There comes a moment in every life when the illusion of control breaks apart and we are brought face to face with the truth. We are not the center of the universe, and we were never meant to be. In that moment, we have a choice. We can cling harder to what's slipping away, or we can open our hands, open our hearts, and surrender. Surrender is not weakness. Surrender is not defeat. In fact, it is the beginning of strength. It is the moment when we finally step out of the driver's seat and let the true navigator take control. We often imagine that yielding our will means losing our identity, our power, our freedom. But what if it means finding our true self for the first time? What if surrender is the doorway not to confinement, but to transformation? Because when we give up trying to mold our lives into our own image, we are free to be shaped into something greater, something truer, something eternal. You see, transformation doesn't come from trying harder. It doesn't come from resolutions or willpower or self-help strategies. Real change, deep, lasting, heart-level change, comes from within, and it begins with surrender. It begins the moment we stop striving and start listening, when we stop pushing our own way and start walking a different path. That's when the hard edges of our hearts begin to soften. That's when the bitterness starts to fade. That's when the fear that held us hostage starts to loosen its grip. Surrender is not a one-time event. It's a daily posture. Every morning we wake up with a choice to lean on our own understanding or to trust in something greater. To let pride steer us or to let humility guide us. It's easy to say we trust when everything is going our way, when the road is smooth and the skies are clear. But what about when the path disappears beneath our feet? What about when the answers don't come, when the pain is sharp, when we're asked to wait or to let go or to forgive someone who doesn't deserve it? That's when the real surrender takes place. That's when transformation begins. And as we surrender, something begins to shift inside of us. The things that once consumed us begin to lose their grip. The desire for control, the obsession with status, the hunger for approval, they start to fade, replaced by a deeper hunger, a better longing. We begin to hunger for truth, for righteousness, for peace that isn't shaken by circumstance. We begin to see with new eyes, to feel with a new heart. That's not something we can manufacture. That's the fruit of transformation. Some people try to change themselves from the outside in. They adjust their behavior, their speech, their image. They play the part, hoping the inside will catch up. But true transformation always begins on the inside. It's like a seed planted in the soil. You don't see it sprout immediately. There's no fireworks, no grand announcements. But over time, slowly and surely, life begins to break through. The roots go down, the stem rises up, and eventually the fruit appears. That's what happens when we surrender. We plant a seed, and the transformation begins. This change isn't something we boast about. It's not a badge we wear or a trophy we display. It's quiet, it's humble, but it is unmistakable. People start to notice. not because we're louder or more impressive, but because something in us radiates peace. We become more patient in the middle of stress, more gentle when others lash out, more compassionate when others are cold. We forgive when others would hold a grudge. We speak truth when it would be easier to stay silent. That's not us. That's the work of transformation taking place through surrender. Surrender strips away the masks we wear. The mask of self-sufficiency, the mask of perfection, the mask of control. And as those masks fall, something more beautiful is revealed. Our true identity, not one shaped by public opinion or personal performance, but one anchored in something eternal. We begin to live not for applause, not for success, but for purpose, and that purpose becomes our North Star, guiding us even when the world around us is spinning. Some resist surrender because they think it means losing control of their lives. But the truth is, we were never in control to begin with. We were merely trying to play a part we were never equipped to fill. When we surrender, we're not giving up, we're giving over. We're placing our lives into the hands of the one who sees the end from the beginning, who knows every step before we take it, who loves us more deeply than we could ever love ourselves. And in those hands, we are finally safe. In those hands, we are finally whole. Transformation doesn't mean we never struggle. It doesn't mean we never stumble or wrestle with doubt, but it means we don't stay where we once were. It means we keep moving forward. We fall, we rise, we grow. Our character is shaped not in the absence of hardship, but through it. Through the pain, through the waiting, through the surrender. That's where transformation takes root. And it doesn't happen all at once. It's a lifelong journey, a process of becoming, of refining, of stretching and shaping. But little by little, day by day, we are made new. Our desires change. Our priorities shift. Our hearts beat in rhythm with something deeper, something truer. And as we change, the world around us begins to change too, because transformed people transform families, transformed people transform workplaces, transformed people bring light into dark places, but none of that begins without surrender. That's the doorway. That's the key that unlocks the change we long for. It's not easy. In fact, it's one of the hardest things we'll ever do. To give up our right to run our own lives, to lay down our pride, our plans, our preferences. But oh, what we receive in return. Peace that surpasses understanding, strength that is made perfect in weakness, joy that can't be shaken by circumstance. This is not a self-help program. It's not behavior modification. It's heart transformation, and it begins the moment we stop striving and start yielding. The moment we stop fighting for control and start walking in surrender. The moment we choose to trust even when we can't see. Because in that place of surrender, we find not loss but life, not bondage but freedom, not weakness but strength. And slowly, steadily, powerfully, we are changed from the inside out. There are moments in life when the weight becomes too much. The burdens we carry, grief, regret, loneliness, disappointment, press down on our shoulders until we feel like we can no longer stand. We put on a brave face. We go through the motions, but deep inside we are weary. Our strength has run dry, and no matter how hard we try to push forward, the energy just isn't there. It's in these moments, when we have come to the end of ourselves, that something remarkable can happen. When human strength is spent, a greater strength is revealed. That strength doesn't come from a motivational quote. It doesn't come from a podcast or a positive mindset. It doesn't come from trying harder or pretending everything is fine. It comes from a place much deeper, much quieter, much more powerful. It comes in the silence of surrender, in the hush after the storm, in the stillness of the soul that finally stops striving. And in that sacred stillness, something begins to rise, not from us, but within us. A strength that is not our own, a strength that holds us up when we should have fallen, a strength that carries us through what we could never walk through alone. This strength isn't always loud. It doesn't always roar like thunder or shake the earth beneath our feet. More often, it comes in whispers. It comes in the moment you decide to take just one more step when everything inside you says to give up. It comes when you rise from your knees, not with all the answers, but with peace that says you are not alone. That kind of strength defies logic. It defies circumstances. It doesn't ignore pain. It meets pain with power. It doesn't deny weakness. It fills weakness with grace. We've been taught to view weakness as failure, to hide it, deny it, overcome it. But what if weakness isn't the enemy? What if weakness is the invitation? What if the cracks in our armor are the very places where strength enters in? We fight so hard to appear strong, to keep it together, to manage it all. But the truth is, we weren't made to carry everything ourselves. We weren't designed to be our own saviors. There is a strength available that doesn't come from pushing through, but from letting go. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means recognizing our limits and reaching beyond them. It means turning toward a source of power that never runs dry. When we're honest about our weariness, when we stop pretending and finally admit, I can't do this on my own, that's when we discover a power greater than ourselves. It's not in the boasting, it's not in the proving. It's in the humility of our admission that we find a strength that lifts us, sustains us, renews us. And this strength doesn't just show up in crisis. It walks with us through every moment. It's there in the quiet faithfulness of showing up when you don't feel like it. It's in the patience you extend when your emotions are frayed. It's in the courage to speak the truth in love when it would be easier to stay silent. It's in the resilience to love again after being hurt. Every act of grace, every moment of endurance, every step forward when it feels like you can't take another, that's not just willpower, that's strength, and it's flowing through you even when you don't realize it. Some people think strength looks like standing tall, like having all the answers, but often the strongest people are the ones on their knees, the ones who cry out in the dark but don't stop believing, the ones who face loss and still choose love, the ones who suffer silently but keep on serving. The world may never celebrate those kinds of victories, but heaven does. And in those moments when we feel like the least, when we feel weak, that is when we are often the strongest, because we are finally drawing from a well that never runs dry. There's a story told of a man who collapsed under the weight of his sorrow. He had lost everything he held dear, his family, his health, his dignity. Friends turned their backs, hope seemed gone, and still he cried out, not in bitterness, but in faith. And through the tears, through the pain, he was met by something he couldn't explain. It wasn't a sudden fix or a quick resolution. It was peace. It was strength. And that strength carried him, step by step, into healing, into restoration, into hope. Not because he was strong, but because he knew where his strength came from. This strength doesn't shield us from suffering, but it sustains us in it. It doesn't always remove the storm, but it anchors us through it. It doesn't guarantee an easy path, but it ensures we are never alone. And when we have nothing left to give, when our words run dry, when our prayers become groans too deep for words, this strength intercedes. It breathes for us. It weeps with us. It lifts our head when we cannot lift it ourselves. There's a quiet miracle that takes place in weakness. It humbles us. It reminds us that we are not invincible, but it also reveals to us just how strong we truly are, not because of what we can do, but because of who is within us. We become vessels, jars of clay filled with treasure. Fragile, yes, but filled with power. And it's through those very cracks, those broken places, that the light shines the brightest. We don't always feel this strength in the moment. Sometimes it only becomes clear in hindsight. We look back on seasons we thought would destroy us and realize we were being held. We were being carried. We were being transformed, and that strength didn't just get us through, it made us new. It deepened our compassion, sharpened our focus, refined our faith. When we stop trying to pretend we're strong enough, we finally tap into the source that has been waiting all along, a strength that doesn't grow weary. A strength that is made perfect in our weakness. It's not about trying harder, it's about trusting deeper. It's about recognizing that even in our most fragile moments, we are not without power, and that power is not ours to boast in, but to live by. This is how we endure the hardest days. This is how we face the impossible, not with gritted teeth and clenched fists, but with open hands and yielded hearts, because when we are weak, then we are strong. Not because of what we can muster, but because of what has been poured into us. That strength, quiet, steady, unshakable, is what keeps us going when we should have given up. It's what helps us love when we should have turned bitter. It's what gives us hope when the night feels endless, and it's there for every one of us, not just in the mountaintops, but in the valleys, especially in the valleys. There is something powerful about the journey itself. We spend so much of our time looking ahead, chasing goals, longing for outcomes, waiting for the day when everything will finally make sense. We think peace will come when we arrive, when we achieve, when we reach the top of the mountain. But life, as it turns out, is not found in the destination. Life is found in the walking, in the step-by-step, day-by-day, breath by breath rhythm of the journey. And when we walk with the right companion, something incredible happens. The journey becomes a place of joy, not in spite of the challenges, but sometimes even because of them. Joy is not just an emotion we feel when everything is going right. It's not dependent on circumstances or the absence of problems. Joy is something deeper. It's a settled assurance, a quiet strength, a deep well that doesn't run dry even when the rain doesn't fall. And it grows as we walk, as we listen, as we follow. When we walk with purpose, when we are guided by something greater than ourselves, even the mundane becomes meaningful. Even the painful becomes purposeful. Even the long and weary roads become places where joy can bloom. We live in a world that tells us to run, hurry to the next thing, achieve more, prove yourself, get ahead. But the most beautiful things in life are never rushed. Think of a tree growing from seed to maturity. Think of the ocean carving cliffs over centuries. Think of the human heart learning to forgive, to heal, to love. These are not instant things. They are slow, and they are sacred. So is the walk. So is the journey. We are not in a race to get somewhere. We are in a relationship that changes us as we go. And as we walk, something shifts inside of us. We begin to see the world differently. We begin to see people differently. We begin to see ourselves through clearer eyes, not as products of our past or victims of our failures, but as works in progress, beloved in every stage of becoming. Joy starts to grow when we stop measuring ourselves by how far we have left to go, and start giving thanks for how far we've already come. Every small victory, every moment of clarity, every step forward becomes a reason to celebrate. Sometimes we walk through laughter, other times we walk through tears. There are seasons of plenty and seasons of pruning, but in all of it we are never alone, and that companionship, the faithful, patient presence that walks with us, is the source of the joy that cannot be stolen. It's the quiet confidence that says, even when I don't understand the road, I know I'm not abandoned. Even when I'm lost for words, I am being led. Even when my heart is heavy, I am held. There is joy in knowing that we are not defined by what we do, but by who we are becoming. Each trial teaches us something. Each blessing reveals something. And over time, we begin to see the fingerprints of grace all along the path. What once looked like detours now look like direction. What once felt like loss now holds lesson. The journey itself becomes holy ground, not because it is easy, but because it is shared. because in every high and every low we are walking with one who sees the whole picture, even when we can only see the next step. We don't have to wait for perfect conditions to experience joy. In fact, some of the richest joy comes in the middle of the mess, when we least expect it. It comes in the quiet moment when a child's laugh cuts through a hard day. It comes in the sunrise that greets you after a sleepless night. It comes in the note from a friend, the whisper of hope, the strength to try again. These are the small gifts of the journey, reminders that even here, even now, joy is possible. Not because of what's happening around us, but because of what's happening within us. Some people believe joy is a reward you get at the end, but joy is a companion for the road. It walks with you through every chapter. It's there in the long waiting rooms and the quick answered prayers. It's there in the hospital visits and the wedding celebrations. It's there in the questions that don't get answered and the miracles that take your breath away. Because this joy is not dependent on the journey going according to our plan. It's rooted in trust that even when the way is uncertain, the path is sure, and that trust brings freedom, freedom from fear of failure. Freedom from the pressure to perform, freedom from the constant need to compare. When we know that we're being led with love, we can rest, we can breathe, we can enjoy the beauty right in front of us. We don't have to rush to the next thing. We don't have to wait for joy someday, somewhere down the road. We can live with joy right now, in this step, in this breath, in this moment. Joy changes how we respond to adversity. It doesn't remove the pain, but it reframes it. It reminds us that suffering isn't the end of the story, that every valley is followed by a hill, that every winter gives way to spring, and that even in the darkest nights we are moving toward the light. When we have joy, we don't just survive, we shine. We don't just endure, we inspire, because the joy that lives within us begins to overflow. It touches others. It uplifts those walking their own hard path. It reminds them that hope is still alive. Walking with joy doesn't mean we always smile. It doesn't mean we ignore what's hard or fake, what we don't feel. It means we carry a light that the darkness cannot extinguish. It means we learn to dance even in the rain. It means we find reason to sing even when the world is silent. That kind of joy isn't taught, it's discovered, and it's discovered in the walking.